this individual that is overtaken by some spirit, as we say in church, like in Pentecostal churches where people get the spirit. He never did. He was performing. I want us to remember that, because one of the things he had to do as a performer is he had to hear his band so that his timing would be correct, that he wouldn't come in out of tune, and so on. And you can't do that if you're taken away in the spirit. So he had to be listening keenly. As a matter of fact, he was so keen that oftentimes at the end of a performance, when his band members would be celebrating about how they wowed the crowd and so on, he'd be angry because of the number of mistakes that the band made and so on. So I just wanted us to understand that at all times on stage, he was performing. He had a unique way of performing, but he was performing. As a songwriter, I think he was rather brilliant. He was able to take everyday sayings, a lot of what, if you listen in Bob Marley's lyrics, and if you should know anything about Jamaican culture, a lot of what he said were things that your parents and your grandparents and the old lady down the street and across the way would say to you. He has come to mind, it is a foolish dog that barks at a flying bird. That's what they call a proverb. And most of his music is like that. But he had a knack to take, it's like going to an art show and seeing something that you may consider garbage, that an artist takes and present it in a way that you say, wow, that was Marley. I think, as I said before, that he was a brilliant songwriter. His original things and the way in which he sang. One of the songs that he does that I love and hate simultaneously is a song in which he said, when I was just a little child, happiness was there a while. Then from me, it slipped one day. Don't you just feel totally devastated by something like that, to see these little children out here just now dancing, and you can imagine as a little child, someone having a measure of happiness that slipped away as if like an egg, and for the rest of one's life, one is sad or saddened. One never is able again to capture that essence, that moment, that pleasure of happiness that he's singing about. As I said, I think that lyric-wise and as a songwriter, he was rather devastating. As, I guess also in the area of an artist, his people around him always remark about the number of hours that Marley would rehearse. Hours and hours and hours. I think maybe the only thing that he loved more than music was soccer. And for days, if he was going to go on tour, if he was going to do an album, he spent tremendous time rehearsing. And we understand from that that the preparation is so important, so essential in anything that we're going to do. That if he is ready, because he made himself prepared, then he can go on stage and do the things that we have come to know him as. And again, I don't think he had an equal anywhere in anything on stage. Maybe if people know of the early Jimi Hendrix, somebody like that who, as I say, would pull all the stops out and do things. Another aspect that we wanted to bring to your attention is Bob Marley as a businessman. He distinguished himself, and I think that this is why the world knows Bob Marley today more than any other reggae artist, and why then no other reggae artist has been able to capture the kind of renown, the kind of celebrity that Bob Marley has. It is because he approached his music from the aspect we talk about, show business. He didn't forget about the business aspect. A very shrewd individual in terms of his business. I understand the first time that the Wailers came on tour, they were promoting an album at the time called Catch a Fire. They played in New York at a club called Maxis Kansas City that could fit in here about 3 or 4 times over. And if I'm correct in this, understood that on the bill was a gentleman by the name of Bruce Springsteen. Now during that tour, coming from Jamaica, where 8 o'clock was 8:30 or 9 o'clock, they showed up on some occasions late. And at the end of the tour, when they were expecting so much money, they got less than that. Why are we paid so little when we were supposed to get this? And the fact was mentioned that on a number of occasions, they showed up late. They never showed up late again. Both himself and Peter Tosh never showed up late again for anything. And that's the difference between, I think, him and a lot of people today. Outside of his punctuality, and you know, I've heard stories where, for example, he is, let me say, coming to play here. They're staying at a hotel in the neighborhood, and they have to take a bus over here. He would be the first person on the bus. 1, to set an example for the rest of his band, and 2, to see everybody who came in late. And one of his people who worked with him, one of his friends, a gentleman by the name of Neville Garrick, said that oftentimes he would complain to his band members as to the question he would ask is, whose name is on the marquee? Yours or mine? And I'm here first, or early, and you're coming late. So I think that is something also we have to get from him, that he was dedicated, you know, he worked hard, he didn't take anything for granted. Now he had tremendous talent, and because he did the other things that helped talent to grow, to develop, he was able to succeed. His success was not something that happened by chance. It wasn't, in my opinion, because Jah blessed him, because he was a Rasta man, because his daddy was a white man, or anything else like that, but it came exclusively from his hard work. At the occasion of meeting a gentleman who worked with Bob Marley, matter of fact, he worked with just about anybody who has ever worked in reggae music, including Ziggy Marley and the Melody Makers. So he has been covering the field of music from then the early Wailers days until today. And he said that for everyone, if you're talking about giving, being dedicated to the job, making an effort, Bob Marley will get 100%. Next, Peter Tosh would be about a 95%. And it went on down the line in terms of when you talk about the success that people have had, how dedicated, how much effort they put into their things. And as I said, his success was not an accident. I mentioned earlier that he invested. You know, he had, as I said, property in Panama. And I'm, you know, thinking, why or how would he end up with investment, you know, property in a place like Panama when he could invest his money in Jamaica or keep it in American banks? And Panama is not the only place. It's just one of the places that was mentioned. As shrewd as he was to business, and maybe before I say this, I should also mention that he built an empire, a business empire in Jamaica with Tough Gone Records, putting hundreds of people to work. And all of that was then put in jeopardy because he neglected one essential thing, which was to make a will out for his estate. And that is something also that comes from his background as a Rasta, which we cannot ignore, and also because it was, regardless of what had happened, you know, Rasta helped to me to liberate him and also to shackle him, because it broke him out into certain things, and at the same time, it kept him within certain conservative thinking. Because today, there's an article in a magazine that is on the newsstands right now called Vibe magazine, where they're talking about a lawsuit that is taking place in England that involves the estate of Peter Tosh and Bunny Wailer against the Marley estate and Island Records and all of what is happening here in terms of money. It is estimated that the Bob Marley estate right now is valued about $50 million. And the thing that I'm most saddened by is the fact that his family isn't getting out of it what he put into it. That's the one thing. Now, since I'm at a college campus and we're all here getting ourselves ready to get involved in our lives, to pursue careers and so on, I figure that what we can learn from Bob Marley is, one, that we have to be dedicated. He was rather dedicated to what he did. He was dedicated to his music, to his craft. Next, you have to believe in yourself. Believe that whatever it is you're here studying, that is something worthwhile. If it's in itself is not worthwhile, it is worthwhile because you're doing it. That you have brought worthiness to whatever it is you're studying. He believed in himself. And that is one of the things that helped to make reggae music what it is today. In the early days, he believed that he had something. That first he said that reggae music was too big for Jamaica. It was big enough for the world. And he wanted the world to hear it because he believed that he had something that could capture the imagination of the world. Next, I said to be committed. Did I say to be dedicated? To be dedicated, whatever it is you're studying, study it with some dedication. Study it to do well. And then have the idea that of being dedicated, of being committed to your communities that you come from, that you plan on going back to. And one doesn't have to be in one's community to be dedicated to what one wants to be dedicated to. One needs to have a spirit of dedication. And like Marley, I think you too can learn this lesson of, in terms of being committed to make sacrifices. He went to Zimbabwe as a guest of the government of Zimbabwe. I understand that when he brought the idea of going to Zimbabwe, that his record company thought it was stupid, too expensive. But it is something that he wanted to do. And because of that, he underwrote the expenses, the entire expense of flying his band, his equipment, everything to Zimbabwe as a contribution. It is something that he said he wanted to do, to make then a contribution to this new state. He was the official guest of the government. He didn't have to do anything. They would then, since they invited him, they could have then been responsible to see to it that he was taken care of in terms of accommodations, in terms of getting his equipment there if they wanted him to perform and so on. He could have done it as a deal that he was coming to perform, as a gig, I think the word is. But as I said, that in terms of his commitment, in terms of his dedication, in terms of him believing in himself, I think that if we should strip away the excesses, there are books, there's a book out called Catch a Fire. I don't know how many of you have read it, but for me, it is not a good book. I prefer a book, there's a book a young lady by the name of Malika Lee Whitney wrote, called Bob Marley, Reggae King of the World, that looks and focuses more on Bob Marley as a human being. And as I said, that is my particular message about Marley, is that I do not want anyone to forget that there were times, as dedicated, as committed, as much as he believed in himself, there were times when he had doubts, like any one of us. You know, some of us graduating at the end of this semester, and as close as you are to graduation, you might still say, I wonder if I did the right thing. And this is what a human being is. The thing is not that we do not doubt, it is that where we have doubt, we can go back, renew ourselves, come with some vigor, come with some confidence, and believing in ourselves, move on. And as I said, for me, the idea is Bob Marley was born, as he said, every big person you see was once a little child. He was born, he grew little by little, he became the man that we have come to know and love. And he's then in that respect no different from us. And I think that as a human being, his life can be meaningful, is worthy of us to learn from. There are things within his life that we can emulate. And thank you very much.
All right, thanks a lot. Again, let's give a warm round of applause for the man himself, HABTE.